Welcome to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here today, predicting every single conference in college football heading into the 2025 season. Dalton, we have previewed every single Power 4 team in depth, all 68 of them. Gotta show some Group of 5 some love, though. We're going to predict all the Group of 5 conferences, in addition to the Power 4 conferences this year, too.
Absolutely, and these were some tough divisions on that level, and even at the Power 4 level, some tough decisions here when you talk about picking out the champions of those, because these conferences now are so packed tightly at the top, most of them, right? You have so many options you can go with, and then just the wild nature of college football week to week. You can have a favorite that falls out of the standings from just one upset. So, look, people try to think, they try to say the regular season's watered down now and this and that, but it's more important than ever, especially when you talk about, trying to win your conference, and your conference, the 5 highest ranked conference champions still get in the postseason, but still looking for those at-large berths too. And I think at any point, especially in the Power 4, a runner-up is also liable to make the playoffs. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch all the way down, including the Group of 5 race, which I think is a little bit even more open than last year.
Oh, it's wide open. It took me so long trying to figure out who's going to win each Group of 5 conference this year. Before we get started, want to remind you guys, PFF Plus sale is ending quite literally today. Today is the final day for the PFF Plus sale. Get it $20 off on your PFF Plus annual subscription. You see right there, until August 18th. Breaking news, it is August 18th today. So it's the final day for the sale right now for the best fantasy tools, the best betting tools on the planet. Also, all the data and insights that all 32 NFL teams subscribe to, and all 136 college football FBS teams subscribe to too. That is available to you guys with a PFF Plus subscription. Again, $20 off. Final day of the sale is today. So go to subscribe.pff.com, use the code EARLYBIRD, or click the link in the description below to get access to the best subscription in sports right now. Dalton, let's start off with the Group of 5. Starting off with the Sun Belt Conference, we're going to go over who makes the Sun Belt title game and who will win the Sun Belt title game. So who is your pick to make it to the title game and win the Sun Belt this year?
And look, very interesting where in a situation in the Sun Belt where this is the only conference left that still has divisions. So we get an East champ against a West champ as opposed to just the two top teams in the standings overall. But I'm going to go first on the East with James Madison. They have a lot coming back. They did lose their best pass rusher in the transfer portal, Eric O'Neal. He went up to Rutgers. But when you look at what this team is bringing back offensively, especially in the run game, if it's last year's starter at quarterback, Alonze Barnett, if it's Matt Sluka, who transferred in from UNLV and is reuniting with Bob Chesney in this offense, and you look at this pair of running backs with George Pettaway, an explosive player, and Ayo Adeyi, he's the transfer from last year from North Texas, who didn't play much last year with an injury. That's an excellent pair of running backs, maybe the best in the Group of 5. And you're talking about a quarterback competition where I think in either case that they're going to be at a major advantage running the football every week. Even though they lost O'Neal on defense, I think their defense is going to be really good. I'm going to take them to win the conference. And on the other side, I think a tough call here on the West side, but I'm going to go with the most proven team that's been winning consistently the last couple of years. They didn't make the Sun Belt title game last year, but give me Texas State. I like the high-flying offense that they have every year. They're another team. They lost an elite pass rusher in Ben Bell as well, but you've got Nate Yarnell transferring in from Pittsburgh and he did a solid job at Pittsburgh in the limited time he did get to play. Lost the job to Eli Holstein last year, but I think Yarnell in G.J. Kinney's offense, they can really be a high-flying attack again, and there's just in the west side of this conference, there's a lot of unproven. Texas State for now feels like the most proven team. Did lose some pieces, like I said, Ben Bell, Ishmael Mahdi, who transferred to Arizona at running back. So I think there are some things to figure out, especially on their defense. But the West half of this conference feels very tough to figure out. Louisiana lost a lot of pieces. There's one team you're going to talk about that gained a lot of pieces, but they've struggled over the last decade. I'm going to go with Texas State, but I think the West is much more open.
I also had James Madison winning the conference right there. I have them winning over Southern Miss, though. I'll get to that in just a second. But James Madison, you mentioned before, 28-9 record during their 3 years in the FBS. Bob Chesney, who took over for Curt Cignetti, who of course is the Indiana head coach right now. Bob Chesney took over last year, 9-4 in his first year as the head coach. Matt Sluka is now back with Bob Chesney. If you remember, Matt Sluka was with Chesney at Holy Cross 2 straight years of Holy Cross with 90-plus PFF grades in that year. Last year, he was at UNLV, but of course, that big story sat out most of the year due to an NIL dispute last year at UNLV. You mentioned George Pettaway. He's back at running back. He led the Sun Belt last year with 35 explosive runs. Iodei only played 2 games last year, but he was the second in group of 5 the year before at North Texas with 7.1 yards per carry. This is the fun one. Southern Miss was 1-11 last year. Southern Miss was one of the worst teams, not only in the Sun Belt, but in all of college football last year. So how in the world are they going to go from one of the worst teams in the country to making the Sun Belt title game in 2025? Well, they just hired Charles Huff. Charles Huff won the Sun Belt last year as Marshall's head coach, and he completely remade this roster in the transfer portal. 10 of the 11 starters on offense are incoming transfers. 6 of the 11 starters on defense are incoming transfers. Josh Moten transferred in from Marshall following Charles Huff. He was one of the best corners in all of college football last year. In fact, he led the nation with a 91.1 PFF grade in 2024. You also have Braylon Braxton coming in from Marshall at quarterback. He was 4th in the Sun Belt last year with a 77.6 passing grade. So yes, last year's Southern Miss was one of the worst teams in the country, but last year's Southern Miss team and this year's Southern Miss team are completely opposite. This is not at all the same roster as last year. Brand new head coach who literally just won the conference last year too. I'm a big fan of Southern Miss this year.
They've really hit the portal in a very targeted way when you look at all the guys that Charles Huff has brought over with him from Marshall, and then their new offensive coordinator, former Utah State head coach Blake Anderson, brought some guys on the offensive side with him as well. I think this is going to be a well-coached team. That defense is really intriguing with all the pieces Huff is bringing with him. There's not a lot of the same roster from Southern Miss's team last year. It's certainly a call because Southern Miss has won only 17 games over the last 5 seasons and made 1 bowl game. But when you look at the core of last year's Sun Belt title team, just straight up just moving over along with the head coach to Southern, it makes a lot of sense if they can just put it together and execute the same way they did last year, especially defensively, because Marshall really did have the best defense in this conference last year.
I'm not going to lie. I forgot the Sun Belt was still going by the 2-division system.
So
I like panic looked up real quick. I was like, dude, did I just pick 2 teams from the same division? Thank God I did not. So Southern Miss and James Madison can happen next year, but they're the only conference, right, that still does
It's
divisions.
the only one left that still does East and West.
When you mentioned that, I was like, oh, God, did I pick 2 teams from the same division?
You had. I thought you knew anyway. So
No, I
actually
forgot.
Yeah, no. So you're just really calling out Southern Miss as one of the true 2 best teams.
Yeah, I am.
In the Sun Belt.
I was quite literally
which is gutsy in itself. But I mean, again, if you're talking about a team that even if they don't get that far, you're talking about a team that should still make a bowl game for the first time in 3 years and be a lot better than they've been. They've got a lot of talent that they've brought in. Like I said, a lot from Marshall and some added in from Utah State as well. This is going to be a fun team to watch in this conference.
So a school that won 1 game last year, I think, will be the runner-up in the Sun Belt. But James Madison, who's been consistently one of the best teams in the Sun Belt, is both Dalton and I's pick to win the Sun Belt this year. I want to shout out our guy Donnie in the chat with the super chat saying, we've never been more back. College football is finally here. We're finally here, baby. We got only a few days left before week 0 of college football, a massive week 0 game in Ireland between Kansas State and Iowa State, the first ranked matchup in week 0 in a quarter of a century. Cannot wait for this Saturday for college football to finally be back. After 7 long months, college football is finally back right now. All right, next up in our prediction is the Mountain West Conference. And Dalton, 2 straight years now, the Mountain West has been Boise State over UNLV. In 2025, what will it be?
It'll be Groundhog Day because I'm taking Boise State over UNLV again. And I think with Boise, when you look at it, this team and the way that Spencer Danielson retains players, I think you could easily argue they have the most returning talent of any team in the group of five, right? When you talk about this was already a playoff team, and yes, they lost Ashton Ginty, but when you look at some of the studs they have coming back, Maddox Madsen, their starting quarterback, Cage Casey, maybe the best offensive tackle in the group of five, Amarion McCoy in the secondary. You look at just so many players. Really, the only pieces missing from this team last year, major pieces, are Ginty and Ahmad Hassanin, their best pass rusher from last year. But I think with what this team has on defense, I think Sire Gaines, the young running back who played early in the season last year, can really take over that role. We know for a decade and a half that Boise State's had great running backs. I think the big question is going to be, there will be a drop-off, obviously, from Ashton Ginty, because it's impossible for there not to be. There's going to be a pretty big drop-off. Can Maddox Madsen make up just enough in the passing game, or can they stay ahead in games long enough for him not to have to carry it on his shoulders? But I'm going with Boise State as the champ, and I'm going to go with UNLV as the second-place team again. Now, I have more questions about this team than last year. Boatload of transfer portal players coming in. Dan Mullen as their new head coach, obviously. The quarterback situation, is it Calandria? Is it Alex Orji? Is it both? One, Anthony Calandria, obviously coming in from Virginia. Alex Orji, people are very familiar with from his time at Michigan. I really think you're probably going to see both of them, especially with the way that Dan Mullen has a history of running quarterbacks, and I think Orji's going to get a lot of run in the run game. But I look at the rest of this conference, and I have questions. I have questions about, Colorado State's weapons, San Jose State's weapons. Fresno State is always decent, but now they have a new quarterback this year, going from Mikey Keene to E.J. Warner, transferring in from Rice. I think these are the two teams I have the least questions about. Even with UNLV having a new coach and a whole new regime and a ton of new players, I'm still going to take Boise over UNLV third straight season.
I hate to go chalk here. I'm also going Boise State over UNLV for the third straight year as well. Mentioned before, Boise State is back-to-back Mountain West titles, made the college football playoff last year before losing to Penn State in the first round. Yes, they lost their superstar generational type running back in Ashton Ginty, who was the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft. But last year's playoff team still has a lot of great players coming back. Cage Casey, maybe the best offensive tackle that we have in the group of five right now. He was the 7th best pass blocker last year, 86.9 pass blocking grade. Marion McCoy is arguably the best group of five corner, or one of the best at least this year too. 83.6 coverage grade last year. Maddox Madsen is back at quarterback. Marco Notarini is back at linebacker. He's one of the best group of five linebackers that we have too. And then UNLV, I love the hire of Dan Mullen. In fact, when Syracuse had an opening a couple of years ago, I really wanted Syracuse to hire Dan Mullen as a head coach. Now, Fran Brown has been great so far for the Cuse, but Dan Mullen is a terrific head coach, and I'm really glad to see him back in the college ranks. From 2018 to 2021, when he was Florida's head coach, Florida was a top 15 team in 3 of the 4 years when he was head coach. And they fired Dan Mullen, and they might regret it now, right? And Billy Napier had a pretty good year last year, and Florida should have a really good year this year, but it felt like Florida was chasing the grass is always greener when they fired Dan Mullen. I don't think they should have let him go. He was a really good coach at Florida. You mentioned that they were very busy in the portal. 9 of 11 starters on defense are incoming transfers. 8 of 11 starters on offense, incoming transfers. Really 3-headed ground game with Jaden Thomas, Jalen Glover, and Kevon Lee, and maybe even a 4-headed ground game if Alex Orji plays at quarterback too, or you have Anthony Calandria too. So you have 2 guys, Calandria, who's a starter at Virginia, Orji, who started some games at Michigan too. I'm still a big fan of UNLV, and I think Boise State and UNLV, like I mentioned before, they're the 2 teams I feel the best about right now in the Mountain West.
I think it could be, despite it being a competition between 2 guys who have had some level of success at the Power 4 level, but not maybe a ton. This could be actually the best quarterback situation in the conference, because I think Calandria did show flashes, especially in his freshman year at Virginia. And Orji, we know he can run the football. There's no question about that. It's more about the accuracy as a passer, especially downfield. But I do think there's a world where this is something of a 2-quarterback system, because I think Calandria, from what I've seen, is clearly the better passer. But with as much as this team is going to want to run the football, and we know, again, Dan Mullen loves his mobile quarterbacks, you're going to see a good amount of Alex Orji out there.
All right, from the Mountain West to MACtion right now, the MAC, who are we taking to win the conference in 2025?
This was one of the hardest ones, because I think there's multiple teams towards the top. I think, if Buffalo has a lot of players returning, they're going to be really good. Miami, Ohio, bringing Daquan Finn back to the MAC picture after a year at Baylor. Toledo has a really good defense. They've got a tradition of that now. I just don't know if they have enough on offense. I'm going to take Toledo as my runner-up. I think their defense, especially with Emmanuel McNeil-Warren back there at safety, they're going to be really good again. I'm going to take Ohio to repeat. They hadn't won a conference title in, I believe, roughly 60 years before last year. I'm going to take them to repeat. I really like Parker Navarro and the way he really became the center of this offense down the stretch last year in the run game. They're returning a lot of pieces in the secondary. Now, the one big question going into it, especially with the way that they want to run the football, is Anthony Tyus, their starting running back last year, graduated, but they got back an old friend in C.A. Bangura, who spent last year at Minnesota and didn't play much, but he was fantastic the 2 years prior at Ohio, went from Ohio to Minnesota, and now he's back home. So I think the run game is still going to be dynamic. The other big question is, how do you replace Coleman Owen at wide receiver? He was the best wide receiver in the MAC last year. If they can find the balance that they had last year throwing the football with Navarro as well as his dynamic running ability, I'm taking Ohio over Toledo. Wide receiver is probably going to be the biggest question for me. The defense is going to be good as it always is, and they're really going to be able to run the football well, I think, again, with Navarro and now with Bangura back in the fold.
We're big fans of Parker Navarro. Also, Timothy Chalamet, big fan of Parker Navarro. Remember that when he was on College Game Day, and they were actually predicting every conference title game until Timothy Chalamet went on like a 2-minute rant about Parker Navarro, how good he's been at Ohio this year.
A known ball knower.
Navarro.
He got raging hot the second half of last year, and they really leaned into the run game and his legs. If they can do that for the entire year, and again, balance will be the key, because losing Coleman Owen, that is not a small loss. Again, he was the best receiver, highest graded and receiving yards leader in the MAC last season, so that'll be a big question. But I think the momentum now and what they're building over there in Athens is big time. To get that off their back, again, they hadn't won a conference title. I forget the exact year, but I believe it was sometime in the 60s. To get that off your back at that point now, I'll take them to repeat, but there's a real competition at the top here. This was one of the hardest ones to pick.
So it was one of the hardest ones to pick. So your runner-up to win the MAC is actually my champion. I have Toledo winning the conference over Buffalo. I have Buffalo making the MAC title game in 2025. Starting off with the Toledo Rockets, though, Toledo has won at least 8 games in each of the last 3 years under head coach Jason Candle, who's one of the best head coaches that we have in the Group of 5 right now. You mentioned Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. He is the best Group of 5 safety, I would argue, right now. 91 PFF grade over the last 2 years. Really, the entire secondary is loaded. They were 17th in the country in coverage grade last year, and they brought back 4 defensive backs who had over a 77 PFF grade on over 300 snaps too. So that secondary is probably the best secondary that we have in the Group of 5 right now. You added a really solid running back too in Chip Trainum coming in. A really solid receiving core too. Junior Vandeross is back too. He was 3rd in the MAC last year with an 82.3 receiving grade. Tucker Gleason is back at quarterback too for Toledo, but he wasn't the best last year. He had 12 big-time throws and 17 turnover-worthy plays. That's kind of the big question mark I have for Toledo right now is, can Tucker Gleason be a lot better in another year as a starter? And then as for Buffalo, they went 9-4 last year. In their first season under head coach Pete Lembo, they were 3-9 in 2023. So a really good bounce back for Buffalo last year. They had one of the 30 highest graded defenses in college football last year. That should remain the case even though they lost their All-American linebacker in Sean Dolak. They brought back 10 of the 14 players on that defense who played at least 300 snaps last year. So it should be a really, really good defense for Buffalo. Once again, Al J. Henderson is back at running back. He was 2nd in the MAC last year with 716 yards after contact and 31 explosive runs last year too. You have Victor Snow back at receiver. He was 5th in the conference last year in receiving grade. And then now you brought in Taquan Roberson as your new quarterback coming in. He was a backup at Kansas State last year, but he started at UConn in 2023. But like Tucker Gleason, wasn't the best at UConn that year. Only a 65.1 PFF grade. So 2 teams that have a little bit of quarterback question marks, but the rest of them, especially the defense, is loaded.
Yeah, it's tough to throw the ball anyway in all those cold weather MAC games, right? But I think Roberson really is the big question there for Buffalo. Like you mentioned, they're going to be able to run the football. They're going to be able to have a good defense. That always gives you the foundation in this conference. But I think that's the one big reason that I went with Ohio over the rest, is that I feel the best with Navarro about their quarterback situation. Roberson's a question. It's kind of a limited ceiling on Gleason, right? What is, even at a team like Miami, what does Daquan Finn look like after a year away at Baylor? And he had an injury last year. I mean, when he was when he was with Toledo, he was really good. He was the best quarterback in the conference. It was just now you're a year away and you're coming back to another new team and all of that. So I think that's the part for me where I go, I like Navarro with the quarterback advantage that Ohio has over the rest. Roberson is a big question for Buffalo.
Definitely. All right, next up is Conference USA. Dalton, what are you going here for this conference?
So I think, the more I looked at it, you just, again, you try to find teams that are retaining the most talent, and this is obviously a thin conference, and there's not a lot of offensive talent in this conference. The two teams that I feel like have that are Liberty and Western Kentucky. I'm taking Liberty over Western Kentucky. Jamie Chadwell obviously was so great for those years at Coastal Carolina. He's been really good at Liberty. Last year, a couple of games they lost, certainly shouldn't have lost to Kennesaw State, and then their two biggest games of the year against Jacksonville State and against Sam Houston, Caden Salter had really meltdowns throwing the football. So now, if they get more consistent quarterback play with Ethan Vasco transferring in from Coastal Carolina, which the funny part, I don't believe Chadwell ever coached Vasco at Coastal, but he knows what he's getting out of him because he knows the style of football that they're trying to play. So I think Vasco coming in, Liberty's got a lot of returning talent out on the outside, and obviously in the middle of their defense, they got a really good pair of safeties. I think the middle of their defense, especially against the pass, is going to be solid. I think Liberty's the most talented team, especially if Vasco comes in and plays well. And then look, when I was looking for a second-place team, I just couldn't find one that was like Sam Houston. They lost basically their entire defense because their defense coordinator went to North Texas, and like the whole defense went to
Jacksonville State lost Rich Rod.
Jacksonville State loses Rich Rod, and they're not. I don't think they're going to be as good offensively. Then I look at, is there a sleeper team like an FIU who's pretty good on defense, but they're unproven offensively? They got better down the stretch offensively, but their two best receivers went to Georgia Tech. Like, this was a conference more than any other that I thought just got raided, especially on the offensive side in the transfer portal. So give me Liberty over Western Kentucky. They're getting Maverick McAvoy, the new quarterback, up from Abilene Christian. Western Kentucky's always got a high-flying offense. I'm taking the two best offenses in this conference, Liberty beating Western Kentucky.
I hate to agree with you, but I'm doing the same exact thing. Liberty over Western Kentucky is my pick as well. You mentioned it. Jamie Chadwell has a 21-5 record in 2 years as the head coach at Liberty. Ethan Vasco, yes, he did lose your starting quarterback and a really good one in that, and Caden Salter is now probably going to be the starting quarterback at Colorado this year, but Ethan Vasco is a very, very good replacement. 84.2 PFF grade last year, actually higher than Caden Salter, and was sixth among all quarterbacks in the group of five. The middle of the defense for Liberty is very strong. Brylan Green, one of the best safeties that we have in the group of five, 87.3 coverage grade over the last 2 years. And Joseph Carter had an 84.2 run defense grade at linebacker for Liberty last year, too. So you have a great head coach in Jamie Chadwell, a really good quarterback coming in Ethan Vasco from Coastal Carolina. And then Western Kentucky, they made it to Conference USA title game last year, but they lost to Jacksonville State. Head coach Tyson Helton has won at least 8 games in 5 of the last 6 seasons, too. Really potentially explosive passing attack. You mentioned it. 2 really good transfers coming in from the FCS to Western Kentucky this year. Maverick McIver from Abilene Christian. He was 5th in the FCS last year with a 90.9 PFF graded quarterback. And then Matthew Henry was 11th in the FCS last year with over 1,100 receiving yards at Western Illinois, too. So you mentioned it. Western Kentucky always has a high-flying passing game. Those 2 coming in from the FCS should remain true again. I'm going Liberty over Western Kentucky as well.
Yeah, I just, when I was looking at it, I just think, especially, again, on the offensive side of the ball, that these are the 2 most talented teams in the conference. It's going to take, I think, a real defensive effort. We saw some teams like that last year, though. Jacksonville State really running the football. You saw Sam Houston State last year with a really good defense, but they've lost a lot of those pieces. I just think, to me, I think the 2 safest bets, especially offensively, are those 2 teams in that conference.
All right, the final Group of 5 conference we're going over today is the American. Who do you have winning the American this year?
All right, so last year, in their first year, the academy schools coming in, and they went and won this conference up there at Army over at Tulane. I'm going to take the other academy school this year. I'm going to take the Navy midshipmen. They're getting their quarterback, Blake Horvath, back, who started last year, the first half of the season, throwing the ball really well and then cooled off. But again, you talk about this triple option attack, and having an experienced quarterback really helps. Blake Horvath is back. Their top 4 rushers are back, including Horvath, including Alex Texa, including Eli Heidenreich, who for the last couple years has been one of the highest graded players in the country. Their top 4 receivers, including those 2 guys, are back. And, one of the things for me with Navy was I think they're one of the teams in this conference where the schedule really works in their favor, at least in conference. We're going to exclude Army because that comes after the conference title game. During the regular season window where they can make the conference title game, they only play one American team. It's not the American Athletic anymore, by the way.
No, I know they got rid of it. Just
they're
American.
only playing one American team on their conference schedule that went better than 6-6 last year, and that's Memphis, the last game of the season. Navy, they don't play Tulane. They don't play UTSA. They don't play a lot of the top dogs in this conference other than Memphis. So I like Navy. I like what they have coming back offensively. Some questions defensively. And then the runner-up here was really hard because, like, Memphis has a boatload of guys that their whole team is transfers, right, including Brendan Lewis. You're going to get into that. Tulane has a lot of questions. They get Jake Retzloff maybe in there as a starting quarterback from BYU, but Mekhi Hughes is gone. They lost like their whole receiving core. They've got some pieces that they lost to the NFL on defense as well. I'm actually going to go with a team that got raging hot down the stretch last year. Give me UTSA as the runner-up. Owen McCown and this UTSA offense could be explosive this year. He could be the highest-graded quarterback in the conference this year with the way he finished. Their last 7 games, they went 5-2. They scored 42 points a game. They were the 5th highest-graded offense in the conference and the highest-graded defense in the conference. And the one thing I wanted to see from McCown last year at UTSA that, again, we'd only seen him in a small sample before that, the year before, but I wanted to see better ball security. 1.9% turnover-worthy play rate, 14th best in the country.
There you go.
So I'm going to take Owen McCown and Jeff Traylor's Roadrunners as the runner-up here. As long as they get enough production on defense, I really like the next step they could take offensively.
I believe this is the first time you and I have 2 completely different teams in this one.
This is a wide open one.
Yeah.
There's a couple of teams. I have no idea what I'm getting out of them. Navy's the one team that I really do look at and I go, they're going to be good. Can they be top 2, right? And then there's the weird thing of the academies playing uneven games and all that stuff. So I really like Navy. To be honest with you, I almost want to believe in Navy to make the playoff. Mm-hmm. The problem is that there's a lot of times there's 1 or 2 games a year where there's just a slip and they just don't execute. And you have that Notre Dame game sitting right there in the middle of it.
Yeah.
That it's always a rough assignment there. But this was maybe, out of all of them, maybe the hardest conference to pick.
It is the hardest one. I'm going to go with, in my opinion, the 2 best quarterbacks that we have in the group of 5 right now. I have Memphis beating Tulane because I think Brendan Lewis and Jake Retzloff are the 2 best quarterbacks in the entire group of 5 that we have right now. Brendan Lewis last year had a 90.1 PFF grade at Nevada. That was actually the highest among all returning quarterbacks in college football. You mentioned it, Dalton. They have 19 of their 22 projected starters are all incoming transfers. So only 3 starters coming back that were on the team last year, really, for Memphis. One of them is their left tackle, and Chris Adams, who was one of 2 group of 5 tackles last year that 80-plus pass blocking and run blocking grades. And last year, Memphis was really good too. They finished 11-2 last year under Ryan Silverfield as the head coach. They were number 24 in the final AP poll too. Ryan Silverfield has a 21-5 record over the last 2 years too. Now you have Brendan Lewis coming in. I think Memphis should once again be a really, really good team in 2025. And then Tulane's made 3 straight American title games. 2, they brought in a really high-profile transfer in BYU quarterback Jake Retzloff in late July. So obviously, he only got here a month ago at Tulane, but he might win that job outright there. He had a 75 PFF grade last year, which is really solid at BYU at the Power 4 level last year too. You have Santana Hopper coming in on the defensive line from App State. He was 4th in the nation last year with an 89.8 PFF grade. Jack Hollifield also came in from Appalachian State. He was one of the 15 highest graded centers that we had last year too. The Green Wave have won at least 9 games in 3 straight years. And like I said, they lost in the American title game last year too. So 2 schools in Memphis and Tulane that have been really consistently good over the last few years. And with 2 high-profile quarterbacks coming into both of those schools, I think they'll both make the title game next year.
I want to throw something out here about this Tulane quarterback situation. I want to credit Garland Gillen, who's a reporter for the Fox affiliate down in New Orleans. He says, the battle at quarterback is down to Jake Retzloff and Brendan Sullivan, but Sullivan is currently dealing with an injury. Ooh. So Retzloff, just a week and a half away, might have the advantage to start week 1 there, even if it's an injury advantage, or we haven't seen obviously a ton of practice videos and things like that. And this was a quarterback situation that surprised the hell out of us last year with Darian Mensah winning it, but it seems like maybe Retzloff does have the inside track there, even though he's gotten there so late.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I can't wait to watch. We have an interview with Jake Retzloff actually from last year while he was at BYU, which is a really, really fun interview with him, and we'll see what he could do at Tulane in 2025. All right, that wraps up the Group of 5. Before we get to the Power 4 with our major predictions for this year, got to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What's a success for your child look to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Funds can be used for nearly anything, benefiting your child from tuition and tutors to music classes. And when they're adults and out on their own, they can use the funds for anything that they need. Start with just $20 with no contribution limits, tax advantages, and your funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000. Plus, no commission fees and just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. Unique giftings can be shared with family and friends, so instead of more stuff, they can help grow your child's investments for their future instead. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFF College. That is meetfabric.com/PFF College, meetfabric.com/PFF College. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, first up in our Power 4 preview. Actually, answer Donnie's question real quick. Owen McCown is the son of Josh McCown. He was asking if he was
yes. Oh yeah, yes he is. Yeah, I forgot in the moment if he was the son of Josh or Luke, but yes, he's Josh McCown.
One of the greatest backup quarterbacks of all time, Josh McCown. So.
Coach Josh McCown.
Coach Josh McCown too. Yeah. All right. First up in our Power 4 predictions is the SEC. Who is winning the Southeastern Conference this year?
I'm almost flipping a coin between these two teams, and you got your prediction in first, so I'm going to go with the other side of the coin. I am going to ride the bounce back of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Kalen DeBoer's unit, I know they went 9-4 last year. The vibes were a little off in his first year without Nick Saban, but I think Ty Simpson's going to come in as their starter and play well. I know Jam Miller, the running back's got an injury right now. He's going to miss the first game against Florida State, but I think you really look at this Alabama team. You've got Ryan Williams. You've got a dynamic offensive line. You've got arguably the most talented defense in the country. LT Overton, Tim Keenan, Deontay Lawson, Keon Sabb, Ray Hubbard, all the corners, everything that they have here. I'm a big, big believer in Alabama. I just think they have a boatload of talent coming back, and I think the offense with Ty Simpson running it is going to look a little bit more like Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb want to, right? Because Ryan Grubb reuniting with DeBoer this year. So I'm taking Alabama as the champion over the Texas Longhorns.
Wow.
I'm in on Arch Manning. I'm in on their defense as well. Honestly, if the two teams played tomorrow, I would just flip a coin to pick who wins. This is really, I sat around thinking about what would this look like head to head, and this is one of the few huge matchups that we're not going to see in the regular season. So I'll take Alabama over Texas. I'm extremely likely, if not, I think pretty much confirmed here that I'll have them both in the playoff because I'm a big believer in the bounce back for Alabama. Still a big believer in Arch Manning in Texas, but if only to be a little bit different from what you have, because I do think these are the two best teams in some order. I'll take Bama over Texas.
So a team that missed the playoff last year is winning the SEC this year, you think?
Sure, why not?
Love it. All right,
keep in mind, they were the first team to miss the playoff last year.
That's true.
And with a lot of people quite irritated about it.
Yeah, a lot of them in Tuscaloosa. I have Texas over Alabama, so actually the complete opposite of Dalton right there. But I think you mentioned it. I'm pretty sure of these two being the best in the SEC right now. I know some people will say Georgia or LSU or some other schools like that. I think these are two of the top 4 teams in college football right now. And I think after the top 4, there is a pretty big gap, or there's a decent-sized gap between the top 4 and everyone else. You mentioned it, Texas and Alabama, they just have two incredible defenses. I would argue the two best defenses in college football are Texas and Alabama, right? So Texas just loaded everywhere in that defense. It was one of the best defenses last year. It's one of the best this year, too. Colin Simmons, the best edge rusher in the country, in my opinion. Anthony Hill Jr., the best linebacker in college football, in my opinion. The best secondary in college football, in my opinion. Alabama has a top 10 player for me at every single defensive position. And then offensively, you got Arch Manning, the Heisman Trophy favorite right now. You have a really good ground game for Texas, too, with Quintravion Wisener and C.J. Baxter still there. You have a good receiving core, a good young receiving core with Jack Endries coming in at tight end. His dad, Robert Endries, big fan of the show. Jack Endries, one of the best tight ends in college football that we have right now, too. Offensive line, there are some question marks because there's 4 of 5 new starters on that what was an elite offensive line last year. And, of course, Arch Manning has to live up to the hype. But you and I think he will live up to the hype this year. Texas should still be a great team. And Alabama, offensively, Ty Simpson is the new starter at quarterback. He was a 5-star coming out of high school a few years ago. He's waited his turn on the bench for 3 years now. You have, in my opinion, the best offensive line in the country. You have one of the best receivers in the country in Ryan Williams, who's now 18 years old as a sophomore in college. He's a rising superstar in the sport of football right now, too. You always have a pretty good ground game there at Alabama, even though Jam Miller did get hurt recently. But I'm with you. These are the 2 teams that I was pretty sure of I would have in the title game. I think Texas will slightly overcome Alabama.
Oh, okay. So Ryan Williams is 18 years old now?
He's now 18.
Oh, okay. All right.
He just turned it.
I'm sure we won't hear that endlessly. No, I think, one thing that is getting, I think, lost in the shuffle with Texas, especially all the hype around Arch Manning and everything else, national championship expectations, is their ability to run the ball. If C.J. Baxter especially is how Trey Wisner was really good, really underrated player for him last year. C.J. Baxter coming back. And don't forget now, Arch Manning's a real rushing threat himself. That could be a 3-headed monster in the backfield on the ground, maybe even more so than it is in the passing game with Manning and his arm.
His uncles, Peyton and Eli, weren't very much of rushing threats, but his grandpa, Archie Manning, and his dad, Cooper Manning, who was a great receiver too. They were very mobile. So
he's got the real athletic.
He got like all the best traits from that family, or just Arch Manning now.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait.
No, it's going to be. I'm buying the hype. I know you are too. I'm buying the hype. You're taking them to win the SEC. It's going to be a fascinating thing to watch, especially Week 1 against Ohio State too.
Our guy Donnie says LSU over Texas is his pick this year. There's a lot of question marks I for LSU.
Well,
right
he's
now.
going. What you're going with there is LSU really is the team in the conference with the most experienced quarterback, right?
And the best quarterback.
If you're doing that, I would say right this minute probably the best quarterback, right? Depending on what you think and the path that Arch is going down. But I mean, there's a lot of contenders, man. I mean, LSU top 10 in the country right now. The more I look at them, the more I even look at this. I'm kind of a believer that Texas A&M is a sleeper in that mix. There's always Kirby Smart and Georgia. There's some teams looking to ascend.
Florida could explode this year.
Florida, Oklahoma, Auburn, Missouri. I think people are forgetting about Missouri and how much talent they have. The SEC, we feel like these are the 2 best teams, but it's not by a whole lot either.
No. So from one conference that's kind of wide open in the SEC to the most wide open conference by far in college football, the Big 12. In fact, the Big 12 favorite, there's 2 favorites to win the Big 12 right now, Kansas State and Iowa State. On DraftKings Sportsbook, they're plus 550 to win the conference. So you have 5.5 to 1 odds on the favorite to win the Big 12 right now. Every other conference has 3 to 1 odds or shorter for the favorite. So this is easily the most wide open conference in America. It's one of our favorite conferences in America, Dalton. Who is winning the most insane conference in college football?
It sure is. It's just wide open, and I don't feel any better about predicting it this year than we did last year. Because did we both take Arizona last year? Was that?
And we went 4-8?
Something like that. Yeah,
that was pretty bad.
Yeah, the Big 12. The Big 12 is rough, but we got Arizona State last year, who the year prior won 3 games. And Kenny Dillingham got them to win the Big 12 title and play a hell of a college football game, a playoff game against Texas, right? And look, they got Sam Leavitt coming back, Jordan Tyson coming back, Kenny Dillingham's building the culture. I'm taking Arizona State as my runner-up this year. And if in the flavor of, okay, we're going to have a team come out of sort of nowhere, although I think more people are on this year, I'm going to take a big bounce back from Kyle Whittingham and Utah to win this conference. I think you look at this team last year, they went 5-7. It was Kyle Whittingham's first losing season, I believe, since 2013. Look at the regular season, though, their defense. They still gave up in the regular season the third fewest points in the Big 12. They're going to be able to play defense. They've got guys. Teo Johnson is one at free safety I think about a lot. Lander Barton's back at linebacker. I think this defense is going to be good like it always is. They had the worst passing grade in the Power 4 last year. I think it was the 6th worst in the nation if you include the group of 5. You're getting Devin Dampier in here, who's one of the most dynamic runners, especially we have in the position in college football. He was 6th in the nation in PFF grade last season. I think Devin Dampier behind Spencer Fano and this elite offensive line and with the way that they want to run the football, I think is going to be a huge factor. And the other big thing for me, if we're looking at schedules, they do have to play Texas Tech, who we think is a prime contender, Arizona State's a prime contender, and Kansas State, who is currently one of the betting favorites to win this conference. You get them all at home. And before last season, Utah had one of the best home field advantages in college football. It was darn near impossible to go in there and win ball games. I'm a believer in Devin Dampier. I think his athleticism and everything he adds to this offense is going to make the difference from the Power 4's worst quarterback situation in the country last year. The Cam Rising injuries and potential return and then injuries again, I think just hung over this team. They were 5-7 and probably still should have made a bowl game even with no quarterback at all. This year they have a quarterback, love their defense, love their offensive line. Big bounce back from Utah. They're going to be back.
There's probably a lot of people surprised that Utah was in Dalton's title game right there and winning the conference after going 5-7 last year. Well, I also have Utah in my title game. They'll be losing, though. I have them losing to Texas Tech, who I think is in for a big, big year in 2025. In fact, Donnie in the chat also has Texas Tech over Utah right there. So ball nowhere and Donnie right there. But, yeah, I have Utah, like all the same reasons you said, should have a great defense once again. And that offensive line is freaking nasty, man. You have Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu. Both those guys could be first-round picks at offensive tackle. Tanoa Togiai at left guard, one of the best guards that we have in the country, too. And the reason why they went 5-7 last year, even though they were the favorite to win the Big 12 preseason, is because they had a revolving door at quarterback with 4 different guys starting games for them last year with all the injuries, and they had the worst passing grade in the Power 4. Whenever you have the worst quarterback situation in the entire Power 4, you're probably going to have a struggle season, and they went 5-7 last year. So they're always a really good team. You can't forget about how good Kyle Whittingham's teams were when they were in the Pac-12. They won back-to-back Pac-12 titles there. I also agree with you. Utah will make it. And then Texas Tech, I don't think anybody did a better job in the transfer portal this offseason than Texas Tech. I think they have the 3rd best defensive line in the country after what was kind of a below-average defensive line last year. Now it's an elite one after all the transfers they brought in between David Bailey, Lee Hunter, Romello Height, Skylar Gill-Howard, and then guys that brought back too for another year or two. I just think the Texas Tech team, all the transfers they brought in offensively too, they, I think, are the most talented team in the Big 12 right now. They killed the transfer portal. I think Texas Tech will be the team to win the Big 12 this year.
3 questions I have for Texas Tech. 1, Baron Morton, big moments, right? There's times where he can be very high or low. There's some days where he looks like even maybe something close to an NFL quarterback, and then there's some other days where it's just a complete collapse, and the play under pressure especially needs to be better. 2, on the offensive side, you're going from offensive coordinator Zach Kittley, who took the FAU head coaching job now, to Mac Leftwich coming up from Texas State. What's the adjustment with a new offensive coordinator? And 3, yes, love the defensive line. One of the best in the country, insanely talented. This team had the 10th worst coverage grade in the country last year. I have the same questions about them as we did about Miami in the ACC last year, where their D-line's going to be sick. I don't have any question about that. Are they good enough in the back end to hold up and not get in all these high-scoring games all the time and make enough stops in pass defense in the secondary to be a factor? If they can do, if those 3 things, it's really quarterback and secondary for me that are 2 big questions with Texas Tech. And I'll tell you right now, week 4. Cannot wait for them to go to Utah and to see Utah's offensive line against Texas Tech's defensive line. And if we get to see it twice, it's going to be awesome. I think that's really going to be the battle, obviously, we're going to talk about when we get to previewing that game. But those are the questions for me, quarterback and secondary with Texas Tech. I'm leaning just a little bit away from it. I think I might even, if I put this all together, probably have them in 3rd place. But I'm gonna trust Sam Leavitt and Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State, and then Kyle Whittingham, Devin Dampier, and everything Utah has, especially defensively, really like it.
I can't wait for that war in the trenches in week 4. My number 2 offensive line in the country in Utah against my number 3 defensive line in the country in Texas Tech, and could have a repeat. In my opinion, we will have a repeat in the conference title game between those 2 teams. Next up is the Big Ten Conference. Last year, Oregon beat Penn State in the Big Ten title game, a game that actually Dalton and I were both in attendance for. What will happen this year?
Look, I think it feels pretty clear who everybody, including you and I, think is the favorite in this conference with all the talent that Penn State has coming back, right? Basically the same team coming back, just without Tyler Warren and Abdul Carter. Now, those are two pretty darn good players. Those are two of the top 14 picks in the NFL draft, and they've already looked pretty great in the preseason with their NFL teams. But you look at the amount of talent Penn State has coming back. Drew Aller, the offensive line, both running backs, redid the receiving core. They always have new tight ends rolling in, like you're mentioning, right? I mean, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, A.J. Harris, Zach Ewe. I mean, just everything you could ask for in a potential national title contender. I'm taking Penn State. And I was debating, there's some weird maybe tiebreaker scenarios when I went through this, and then I eventually just had to pick the team I think is more likely. I was debating between Ohio State or Oregon as the runner-up, but I went with Ohio State. I still think, look, Penn State has to get over the mental hurdle of beating Ohio State at some point, whether it's here in Columbus in, I think, early November, or if it's in this Big Ten title game. I'm going to take Penn State over Ohio State. I think Penn State is the most talented team. I think Oregon's very much a factor. The part where it gets weird is that Penn State plays both of them, but Oregon and Ohio State don't play each other this year in the regular season. And then if you're talking about sleepers in the Big Ten, you start to talk about the Indianas, the Illinois, maybe an Iowa, somebody like that. Nebraska's another one a lot of people are excited about. We'll see year 2 of Dylan Raiola. But right now, I still think the two most talented teams I feel the best about, Penn State over Ohio State.
I have the same exact prediction right there. Penn State over Ohio State as well. Donnie has Penn State over Oregon in the chat, and I almost went with that, but I just feel better about Ohio State right now. I think they'll probably lose. I think both Ohio State and Oregon will lose to Penn State in the regular season, but Ohio State plays Texas as well, so Ohio State could be a 10-2 team that goes to the Big Ten title game, even though Oregon's 11-1. Just the tiebreakers are too complicated for me to go through, so I feel better about Ohio State going into this year than Oregon. So I have Penn State over Ohio State. And actually, the Jim Knowles Bowl right there. Jim Knowles going from Ohio State to Penn State.
Of course.
Defensive coordinator right there. But you mentioned it right there. Penn State, they made the semifinals last year. Basically the same team from last year's back, aside from Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren, who, yes, are two superstars for Penn State last year. But the whole rest of the team is really back. And they brought in Jim Knowles, who, in my opinion, is arguably the best defensive coordinator that we have in college football. And I would say right now, Penn State has the best coordinator pairing in college football between Andy Koldenicki on offense and Jim Knowles on defense. Just a loaded team top to bottom. In my opinion, pretty clear top 3 teams right now in Clemson, Texas, and Penn State. So Penn State's winning the conference. And then Ohio State, who actually just today named Julian Sayin their starting quarterback for week 1, the 5-star quarterback coming out a couple years ago. You have the best receiving core in the country with Jeremiah Smith, the best player in the country at wide receiver. Max Clare coming in at tight end, top 3 tight end in college football. Some question marks on the offensive line and the defensive line, so really the trenches for Ohio State, but you have Caleb Downs, the best defensive player in the country at safety, a good linebacker unit with Sonny Styles there too. Yes, Ohio State lost a ton of players from last year's national title team, but still, it's Ohio State. They're always going to be at the top of the Big Ten, and I think they will get to the Big Ten title game after missing it last year.
Yeah, no, I think that's the tiebreakers are going to be a question. There's some fun head-to-head matchups that we're going to see. I mean, obviously, Oregon has to fly all the way out to Penn State to play them. Ohio State is hosting Penn State, and they've got even a couple other tough road games mixed in there. And then again, I'm really curious about the second tier of the Big Ten also, and if anybody, again, just finds that momentum. Nebraska. Indiana, again, we do not need to forget about Indiana. They still are a really good football team. If they pull an upset or two, they get to play Penn State, they get to play Oregon, right? All of a sudden, if Indiana messes around and beats one, if not both of them, you got a situation on your hands. A lot of people high on Illinois. They got a ton of teams returning. So the Big Ten, I think we get a feel for who the 2 or 3 favorite. Michigan, let's not forget about Michigan now if they can find anything on offense, right, especially with Bryce Underwood. So I think it's going to be a little more tightly packed. I think last year, obviously, Indiana was really good, but their schedule allowed them to win, and it felt like they were clearly the 4th best team. The gap between the top 3 and maybe 4 through 8 or 9 is a little bit tighter this year.
Absolutely. Donnie's a little upset with me in the chat for saying Jim Knowles is the best DC in college football because Phil Parker.
You know he loves Phil Parker.
Phil Parker actually probably is the answer there, but Jim Knowles is right up there too. I'll put there. So shout out Donnie in the chat. But all right, next up, the final one, who I think has a pretty clear favorite in the conference right now. That is the ACC, but there is a wide open race for who will be the second best team in the ACC this year. And last year, 2 ACC teams made the playoffs. So even if you don't win the conference, you could make the playoff in 2025. Dalton, who are you picking to make the ACC title game and win it this year?
All right, let's end the suspense on who we're taking to win it here. It's Clemson Tigers. I think it would be a major upset. I don't know if they're minus odds right now, but it would be a major upset if Clemson did not win the ACC. I think the easiest pick out of probably any conference that we've done here. The amount of talent's just crazy. Cade Klubnik, his top 3 receivers are back. Basically, his whole offensive line is back. The best D-line in the country with Peter Woods and TJ Parker and DeMonte Capehart. You've got a loaded second. You got everything. You got everything you could ask for in this Clemson team. And again, they're coming off a year where they were not supposed to win the ACC last year, and they did it anyway, and they played really, at least Cade Klubnik played really well in that playoff game against the best secondary in college football last year in Texas. Clemson's the easy pick. The hard part was picking a second-place team. I think it's wide open. Yeah. I think it's super wide open.
By the way, Clemson's plus 105 on DraftKings.
Close enough then.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it would be a major upset if Clemson did not run the table here in the ACC. And maybe one loss you mix in there. From, they lost to Louisville last year. That was a tough one, but
maybe LSU, but they're undefeated in the conference.
They are far and away the most talented team in this conference, right?
I would say the country.
Maybe the country. Maybe Penn State's
not far and away, but I would say they're the most talented team in the country.
Penn State, Texas, obviously Ohio State's always got talent, but I mean, it's just they're the prohibitive favorite. If you're not picking Clemson to win the ACC, you better have a good reason.
Yeah.
You better have a darn good reason, or you just don't like Clemson. I mean, that's pretty much where it's at. But second place, a lot more wide open. Louisville, I like what Jeff Brom's got going with that program and getting Miller Moss in there. I like what their offense is going to look like. Miami, if you're going to have to replace Cam Ward, which he's really irreplaceable, you couldn't do a whole lot better than Carson Beck, even though I think that's still kind of a slight downgrade because Cam Ward, a lot of other years, would have won the Heisman last year, right? Georgia Tech, a lot of people are high on. SMU, Rhett Lashley's got that program going, but I'm worried about their front 7 and all the pieces they lost. I'm gonna take a weird sleeper because I just couldn't – it was hard for me to pick. Give me Manny Diaz and the Duke Blue Devils.
Wow, okay.
I'm going with the momentum here. Look, their defense was spectacular last year, as it should be under Manny Diaz. When you talk about especially Chandler Rivers and Terry Moore and that secondary, I think this is actually a sleeper. When you look at the schedules especially, and maybe finding a route to 10 wins or even 11, I think Duke's a sleeper playoff team.
Okay.
I do. I think with this defense, Darian Mensah coming in now at quarterback. The quarterback play was not great last year. Malik Murphy had his moments, but he also had moments in big games where it was inconsistent. I think Mensah can be more consistent than Murphy. They lost Star Thomas at running back, but they still have guys like Jaquez Moore back there, an experienced offensive line. And you look at this. I'm going to be honest with you, Max. You look at their schedule. They only play – so there's 4 teams ranked in the ACC, in the AP poll right now. Duke's only playing one of them, and that's Clemson. And they get them at home, and I'll be honest, with their secondary, they may be the most equipped to give them a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have questions about Louisville's secondary. I have questions about Miami's secondary, all these other teams head-to-head against them. So I'm not saying by any means they're going to go into Clemson and win. But look at the rest. I would say the next toughest game on their ACC schedule is probably Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And that's at home. They only take one West Coast trip to Cal. I like them better than Cal. I'm going to tell you something right now with Duke. They go out week 2 at home, and they beat Illinois. You got a playoff contender. I'm telling you right now, between A, beating a team the quality of Illinois, and B, you just look at the rest of their schedule at Tulane is so much fun with Darian Mensah, especially if it's Retzloff as Tulane's quarterback. But NC State, Syracuse, Cal, Virginia, UNC.
Don't sleep on the orange right there.
Oh, Steve Angeli coming at you. But I really like the way this schedule sets up for Duke. They don't play Louisville. They don't play Miami. They don't play SMU. They get Georgia Tech at home. I'm not taking them to beat Clemson at Clemson. But this defense, the momentum Manny Diaz has, and this year they have a quarterback, I'm going to take a wild card. I'm going to take Duke as the second place team.
I love that. I really love that. I feel like this could be the year where we see an underdog come out of nowhere in the ACC this year, maybe my Syracuse Orange, but I'm actually going to ride with the favorite and Donnie's pick as well, which I'm going Clemson over Miami to win the ACC this year. Miami, of course, felt like the favorite going into it last year. They screwed it up in the final game of the season against Syracuse. They could not make the ACC title game. Clemson got in over them. Clemson made the playoff over them because of that too. But I think Clemson will, of course, win the conference. I have Clemson right now as the best team in the country. We'll get to our playoff picks later this week on Thursday. Don't want to spoil anything yet there, but Clemson is so talented. I think they're easily a top 3 or 4 team in college football right now. And then Miami, trenches are loaded, right? They have a really good offensive line. Francis Mauigoa at right tackle could be a top 10 pick in the draft. Ruben Bain at edge rusher could also be a top 10 pick in the draft. Some question marks in the secondary, but they did improve it with some transfers coming in there as well. And then the receiving core is the one thing I do have questions about right now. They have some young and promising receivers right now, but they lost a lot of pass catchers from what was an elite unit last year. And we saw Carson Beck at Georgia. He needs really good weapons to succeed. Last year at Georgia, without Brock Bowers, without Ladd McConkey, his passing grade dropped by more than 10 points last year, right? So that was an issue for him. Will it be better at Miami with worse defenses going against in the ACC? We'll see. But I don't think he could have done better replacing Cam Ward, the number 1 overall pick in the draft, with Carson Beck, who in my opinion is still a top 5 quarterback in college football. There's a lot of people at Miami already loving Carson Beck right now. I saw some quotes saying he's the next number 1 overall pick at Miami. Don't know if I'll go that far, but I'll go with Carson Beck, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback in the conference behind Cade Klubnik at Clemson. I'll go with those two to make the title game, and Clemson, again, like I said before, is a pretty obvious pick to win the ACC this year.
I might have mentioned this when we did their preview. You want a weird fun fact about Miami's schedule? They don't leave the state of Florida till November 1st.
That's just insane, man.
They have 6 home games, and their 1 road game is Florida State. They don't leave the state of Florida till November 1st. They only leave the state of Florida 3 times a whole year.
That's crazy.
Which feels odd to me. But no, we're going to know early. We're going to know out of conference with Miami if Carson Beck's about it. I mean, you got Notre Dame and Florida as 2 of your out of conference games.
We got Ryan Nelson in the chat saying Georgia Tech or Louisville will play Clemson in the title game. I like those two again.
I almost went Louisville. We're very high on Louisville around here. We like Miller Moss. We like the fit.
Interviewed Miller Moss last year.
We like the fit with Jeff Brom. And you look at Louisville's schedule. The thing with Louisville is kind of part of their schedule. They are at Miami on a Friday night. They host Clemson on a Friday night. And they're at SMU the week after Clemson. They're playing some of the tougher teams here. That Louisville-Miami game in mid-October at Miami is going to be fascinating. Maybe the biggest game in the ACC this year.
Yeah.
If we're just shooing in Clemson to the title game. I almost went with Louisville as well, but I wanted to be fun. I wanted to pick a wild card. I really do actually think, I'm telling you, I think Duke is in that mix. They were very underrated last year.
Well, you wanted to be fun. E&R also has Duke versus Clemson as his title game too.
Manny Diaz got it rolling. I'm telling you, if they're any better in the passing game than they were last year with their secondary and what Manny Diaz is building there, head-to-head, they're a problem. And I'm telling you, they have one of the easier ACC schedules, aside from, yes, having to play Clemson. But I'm telling you, don't sleep on them. We'll see what Darian Mensah looks like up at the Power 4 level, but I think it's going to be fun to watch.
All right, that wraps up our conference predictions for every single conference in college football heading into 2025. We have one final prediction video coming out before the season kicks off. That is on Thursday. Our playoff predictions. I'm trying to go 3 for 3 in my PFF career, getting the national champion right. Dalton's trying to go, 1 for 2? You're 0 for right now.
Yeah, I'm 0 for, because the year before I didn't make a preseason pick. But I'm trying to go 3 for 3 in having a better record than you are in game picks.
That's right. Well, real quick, last year in our conference predictions, we were both 2 for 9 on conference winners. So not great for both of us.
Well, we just cursed a whole bunch of teams then is what we did. Okay.
But you had 7 for 18 on participants in the title game, which is pretty solid. I had 8 for 18 participants. So I beat you in participants. And we're the same record for winners. So
feels bad.
We'll see. Dang. But actually, the next video coming out will be either tomorrow or Wednesday probably, our full preview of the game in Ireland in week 0 on Saturday between number 17 Kansas State and number 22 Iowa State, a massive game in week 0. And then, like I said, on Thursday is our full college football playoff predictions, predicting all 12 teams that will make the playoff and who will win the national title in 2025. For producer Eli back there, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys very soon with our college football playoff predictions and our Kansas State-Iowa State preview.